How do you actually en masse handle that type of volume of paper? Like I'm picturing just a giant warehouse. Does the Dewey Decimal system still apply here?
Yeah, that's that's pretty much it. Is it's a large secure storage facility, and we're fortunate because we're starting to hit that transition where there are more physicians that are on EMRs. So we're seeing even blended systems where physicians have converted most of their physical records to EMR, and that helps obviously with the volume of paper. But I think it was you had a conversation with Dr. Sharma where you mentioned 40% of physicians in New Brunswick are still on paper charts. And I am dealing with that situation where a lot of them it's entirely physical charts. There's not even a computer in the office, so these files are coming to us in their very original form. So yeah, so what's convenient is there are guidelines in terms of if you digitize a record and you can attest to the quality that it's consistent with the original, then you can destroy the hard copy after it passes quality checks. So what is convenient is if a physician closes and they have a lot of physical charts, as patients request copies of their records, we're creating digital copies, which allows us to reduce the volume of paper on hand. So like I said, there's a bit of a balance between long-term storage and short-term storage, and it's at its core, it's just an inventory management system, and you just do your best to index and maintain the quality. And like I said, there's certain files and charts where I mentioned it to you beforehand where, WSIB records, for instance, in Ontario, some of them need to be kept for over 40 years. So, some physicians and
Wow.
specialists, yeah, exactly. So some physicians and specialists, they have an option. They can either pay, to have those records put into long-term storage and just maintained, or, we can actually provide digitization services, which is significantly cheaper in the long term, from just paying for generic storage. So this way it creates a digital copy for both the physician and their storage requirements, and they don't have to worry about the long-term ramifications of the storage.
What possible context would you need to pull out a 40-year-old file?
So like I said, in Ontario, with WSIB, if it's workplace injuries, claims against a company, those are the files that WSIB Ontario has outlined need to be held for that period of time. So, I don't set the guidelines because I know, like I said, some of them are pretty stringent. So we just do our best to support the physicians who are, adhering to these guidelines. Once they're going into retirement. Because again, if you have a physician who's retiring in his late 60s or early 70s and he's got a file that's supposed to be stored for 40 years, the math doesn't really add up for how he's going to be able, or how he or she's going to be able to manage that record for 40 years. So, it's either the physician has a plan in place to continually pass on these files, which comes with a whole broader set of issues for managing that file, or he assigns it to a custodian like ourselves to manage it for that timeline.
That's crazy. Okay, well, hopefully that's not necessary too often, but I guess the rules is the rules.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I said, the recalling a file like that isn't as common as you would think, but you still have to be compliant with those requirements. So, like I said, maybe they'll change them in the future, or there'll be a different filing system that allows us to make it a more convenient process. But it's what we currently deal with as in place right now.
How do you actually set up a payment and like I'm picturing, if you get yourself cryogenically frozen after you're dead, you like have a giant trust and like the interest in that account funds your, liquid nitrogen refills. Is
Yeah.
that how this has to operate as well?
So that's it's interesting, the storage contracts, they can be complicated in the sense that you're looking at long-term storage, and we try to make it as cost effective as possible for physicians. So, we do tiered storage and we reduce the pricing annually as we can, as files come up for destruction. But, if you're a family physician, there's actually a lot of ways where the price can be reduced to, potentially free services, for a family physician, especially if we plan well in advance with the family physician. And then it's specialists who typically, their files have already been passed off to a family physician. So they're just paying you typically for the storage of their records, because it's very uncommon for a specialist to have their files recalled. So, their objective is just to have it securely stored, and they have the peace of mind that their records are going to be compliant with their requirements. Whereas family physicians, again, because there's usually a lot of requirements and requests for patients requesting their files. If we work with them early enough, we can usually create a payment system where the physician actually has no cost for storing their files for 10 years, which is obviously ideal for them. And then they have the peace of mind of, again, not having to answer a phone call in 5 years from a patient looking for a copy of their medical record.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with the price of zero, free for 10 years. That sounds nice.
Yeah, exactly. And the key to that, and I mentioned this to you while we were chatting, is trying to have the foresight to plan for your closure. It's your last podcast on physician wellness with Dr. Jean Lajoie, highlighted a very common theme these days with physician burnout. There's a lot of people leaving the practice, and they're not leaving the practice by choice. They're being forced out of the practice because of health reasons. And, they're stuck in awkward positions because they either physically can't deal with the transition and record storage requirement. So it's the admin staff or family members that are required to deal with this. And when that happens, the cost can increase because there's less planning and there's more overhead just to get the whole process started. So, I always say, even if you're not retiring in 6 months or 10 months from now, if you have the ability to plan a year out minimum, that is the best case scenario, because, people often think about practice closure as, I'm closing up my practice, I'm going to send my patient notices, do this and that. But, these are small businesses for a lot of physicians. So, there's legal ramifications, financial ramifications. There's, whether you're leasing your office or you own your office, all the offices, like there's such a long checklist that needs to be considered. And it's unfortunate how common it seems to be. It's coming that doctors are calling us at the last possible minute because they've been holding out hope that someone might step in and take over their practice, or like I said, they've just hit the physical end and they can't continue practicing, and they need support immediately. So, for us, even when we don't work directly with a doctor, anytime we speak with doctors, we are just trying to raise awareness, because whether you engage with us now, in 3 years from now, we just want it to be something that it's more top of mind. They're more aware of what they should be doing. And it's not something that sneaks up on them at the very end.
I'm Dr. Jordan Vollrath, and you've been watching Cherry Live, brought to you by Cherry Health. Please like and subscribe to see more clips like this, or check us out at www.cherry.health, Canada's medical network.